It's February 18, Ukraine Media Center starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheparenko, and now we will be talking about military recruiting and about how the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade brings new recruits. Joining us in the studio are Dmytro Kukharchuk, head of recruitment of the 3rd Assault Brigade, Oleksandr Borodin, press officer of the 3rd Assault Brigade, and call sign student, chief sergeant of the Trial Week project. Good morning, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. So let's start with the figures. It's really interesting how many people have you been able to attract through different recruiting programs. I think that 3rd Assault Brigade is probably the most prominent in the media, and it makes an impression that you were able to attract a lot of recruits. So can you please share any figures with us, Mr. Dmytro? Well, first of all, let me start with the concept, and then we'll proceed to the figures. Because when it comes to recruiting, you have to understand that it's a unique new concept that was not suggested by anyone before. It was basically founded by us in Ukraine because we were always understanding our unit was made up of volunteers only, and such principles were founded by Andrei Beletsky, our founder. And there was always understanding that motivation is above all. And basically, talking about the modern image of the war, people imagine it in the following way. There is a bus that takes them to the war, then there is war, and then there is a coffin. We have a human-centric brigade. We invest in our people. We value every human life. This is why recruiting and main its components are not in the Borodin campaign online that gives additional advantages, obviously, but in the word of mouth, in understanding that people inside of the unit feel themselves secure, they feel themselves protected, they feel themselves valued. Everything is done to preserve their life and health. All those principles are achieved by the high level of medical care, the patronage service that takes care of the families of the dead and the wounded ones, the high level of planning that allows us to minimize the level of casualties, as well as moral and psychological training that allows people to understand where they are. Currently in Ukraine, the Institute of Morale, the ideological component on the state level is not high enough, I would say. Our system allows us, well, let's see how it happens on our end. First of all, it's word of mouth, but how do we find people? First of all, people find out about us. They get in touch with us, or they leave an application on our website. We get in touch with them. And the first touch is when people come to one of our recruiting centers. We deployed recruiting centers in Kyiv, Dnipro, Lviv, and Odesa. So people are getting accompanied there. And from the very first day, they start the onboarding and military training process. So there are periods of basic military training in the training centers, and there is a pre-training that we provide in our centers. And after our recruiting centers, when people go to the training centers, they tell us that we provide them with a higher level of knowledge than what they find out or what they learn at the training centers. So at that very basic level, people already know that they're being taken care of, they're being valued, and it allows everybody to survive because people's lives are invaluable. Our task was always to fulfill our battle task and save human lives. When it comes to the sources that we have, there are people just coming from the street, so to say. There are people coming from other military units, those who are being transferred. In the same way, I work with the people from the prisons, the so-called pardoned ones. That's quite an intense project. And we work with those who left their units without permit, And also we work with the foreigners. We have the first English-speaking and Spanish-speaking battalion in our ranks. When it comes to absolute numbers, it's about 500 plus people per month. Is it more difficult to bring new people now? I mean, the new people, those who are ready to join the brigade, because probably it's a fact that in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the majority of people who were motivated, they have already joined the ranks of the armed forces. Then within the next year, there was additional probably inflow of people, but then this flow has went. I think we've beaten our record in November 2024. We had 565 people recruited per month, and our numbers are only growing. Generally, we're increasing the indicators, and in percentage within the period of the year 2024, it demonstrated that more people joined our ranks than in the year 2023. Well, what were the preconditions? I think that it's all about the image of the unit itself. You know, when people are looking for a unit to join, when people understand that they are going to join the ranks of armed forces, or they will be forced to join the ranks of armed forces, they start looking for a unit. They start trying to find out more about the atmosphere, about the internal climate in that unit. And basically now it's easy to get in touch with the brigade to find out about the level of supply, the kind of internal relations, the attitudes inside of the unit, plus information campaigns. Definitely they draw attentions, but the task of media campaign is to draw attention. However, after the attention is already drawn, well, I don't want to criticize other military units because I treat all of them with huge respect. However, there are less successful units in terms of fulfillment of their tasks. So imagine they have such a media campaign as we do, and then people start getting in touch with the units and trying to find out whether everything is true on the big boards or in advertisements. In our case, when people get in touch with us, they find out, yeah, that things are as they are being described. Well, the people that are being targeted by your recruiting, so whom exactly are you looking for? What are the requirements on your end and on the end of the recruits? Well, look, we have quite a good HR. Our recruiting contacts directly with the heads of all of the structural units of the brigade, and on top of bringing people to infantry units, to UAV units, to different positions, there is quite a wide range of positions, non-combat positions, that is offered to the people who are ready to join the ranks of the armed forces but cannot work in the infantry units. So we communicate with different units. We gather their requests they require for certain positions that can be a working specialty like electrician, driver, turner, as well as such positions as data analysts and say radar operators. Okay, so now what is the biggest demand in your brigade? Well, basically we're looking for everybody. There is no single person in Ukraine. Well, probably there is a matter of certain restrictions, but if a person has a motivation, they will be able to fulfill themselves within our unit. I mean, it applies to all of the positions that are directly related to fulfillment of combat tasks, as well as logistical positions. Our units are expanding. Our UAV units are expanding because the nature of war has changed dramatically. It's quite an important component. It's important for us to get feedback from the bottom, so to say. I am a former battalion commander, and I clearly realized the necessity of reformation of armed forces to fit the requirements of the war. If we compare the war of the years 22-23 with the war of the years 24-25, I would say the war is changing on a quarterly basis. Now 80% of damage is inflicted by drones and robotized systems. The specifics of the war are changing. The war itself is changing. The people are changing. They need to be retrained, requalified, because currently it's the drone war that we have. And according to the unit organization, the UAV units are being expanded, and we need people who can lift FPV, who can lift bombers, who can lift wings, Mavics. Like I named one person for each specialty. In every such case, it implies the full crew, like assistants, drivers, service personnel who put together the ammunition, a lot of specialties. The majority of the people can find themselves there. So how is the selection process going on? How do you screen the people? How many applications? Like you show some interest in people, people show interest in you. However, how many applications are left unresponded? Well, it's a case-by-case basis. I cannot give you the exact number because it varies depending on well, it just happens differently, a person, first of all, has to be motivated, because we use the voluntarity principle. It was laid as a foundation by our commander, and it's being preserved no matter what happens. So first of all, a person should be motivated, a person should be psychologically resistant and mentally stable. And if it's a matter of, say, infantry specialty, then it's a physical training test. If it's about logistical positions, is their desire, their qualification, and their inspiration. Thank you very much, Mr. Oleksandr. Let's talk about maybe some dedicated campaigns that were aimed at reputation and recruiting. So what was the way of recruiting that proved its efficiency? Which were the tools that worked the best? Well, look, basically there is a number of nuances. First, we have to clearly understand what's going on with the social. How can we reach out to our target audience? And every campaign has its own specifics. As our friend Sleep was saying, the war is changing and the social is changing. It tunes to those challenges, to the vision of the social. We have to orient at our target audience. I'm definitely talking about them. And then it implies intense work with different online activities. No activity can work without clear coordination of those online activities, starting with events when it's really important to come and talk to the real warriors. A lot of things are said in the media. You can watch million different videos online, but the majority of the guys who want to come, they are like, oh, okay, I have a couple of inconvenient questions and I need a place where I can talk to them. And they respond to different activities, different initiatives. And before joining the ranks of the armed forces, the people should feel what it's like. Definitely they're not going to understand the war, the social projects, but when it comes to the test week, the trial week, they can understand what it takes to live under the regime, in the discipline, to live in a collective. That's quite an important component, because in the army, the problem with transition is that there is no way you can try yourself. You're either a civilian or a military. There's no anything in between. And this boot camp, this trial week, such initiatives, they try, just like FPV schools, for example, they try to make this test format implemented so that people can film themselves in those conditions, in that environment, and people come with one thoughts and they live with different thinking of themselves. They think like, yes, I can do that. So that's a good link, that's a connection that works on all of the stages. Well, thank you. Now that you've mentioned the trial week, let's talk about this project. I would like to ask you to tell more about it. How does it work, and what are basically the results that the potential recruits are getting after the trial week? Well, look, the trial week is quite a unique project, a unique program made by the 3rd Assault Brigade. It was mostly established to open that curtain for our society, behind which they can see that army is not scary. The military are not scary. They are just the same people as you, just wearing uniforms. It's just another kind of job, and we can find the job for all of you. And during the trial week, both boys and girls are coming to try themselves. We show them, you know, like the last switch in the dark room. Like in the childhood, you are afraid to enter the dark room, but now you can switch on the light and you can see what's going on inside. And we give everybody this opportunity to try themselves in infantry units, to dig the trenches, to do assault, to storm the trenches. We have kill house, we have UAV operators, to see how it works, what is the range of positions, what is your level of readiness. You know, it's an opportunity without draft notices, without contracts, to try themselves as the military, feel our ideology, our spirit, our strength, our motivation, and it works. Well, how many people are staying with the brigade after the trial week? Well, look, I cannot disclose our numbers, internal numbers, but let me tell you that the half of those who arrive on a weekly or monthly basis, they're staying. Well, that's quite an impressive number. Well, because it's cool with us. You can try yourself. Look, where else can you find such a unique opportunity to try yourselves with the active military of the 3rd Assault Brigade? With their experience, you can live with our warriors. You get 3 meals a day. You get everyday training. You're not only shooting a rifle, but you do the mining, you do the engineer training, you can do the physical training with them and get some unforgettable experience. We're warmly welcoming every one of you. Well, Mr. Oleksandr, getting back to your recruiting campaign, you've mentioned that every campaign is targeted at certain target audience. So who is your target audience? That's a real broad question. I can say mostly our target audience are young men, but one way or another, our brigade is pretty young. And, you know, our statistics, again, cannot be disclosed, but I think that by average age, we are either in the first or second place. And as it was mentioned, our UAV component is developing quite intensely, and this audience, the young males, it can be expanded because a lot of people are required for other positions that don't really require, well, you know, when we say the 3rd Assault Brigade, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an assault soldier. You know, the stormtrooper is a highly qualified infantryman with a high level of experience, not only with a high level of motivation. So in order to become a stormtrooper, you have to deserve it. It's not so easy. And again, there's a lot of positions that require qualification, that require experience in different areas. I mean, civilian experience. And now it's a target audience that is being expanded, so to say. When it comes to UAV, that's quite a narrow audience, but when it comes to infantry, that's way broader. And again, talking about campaigns, they depend on that, first of all, and also they depend on the attitude of the society. For example, like a campaign, the Summer and Stars and the Zombies campaign, they are completely different. So our society is changing as well as our target audience is changing. And we have to keep gathering information and adapt ourselves to come up with the new creative ideas. Well, I would like to ask about the campaign. I love the 3rd Assault Brigade. I'm not going to ask you whether you were realizing the risks, because you were already commenting on all those claims about sexism and stuff, but still, has it worked? Have you reached out to your target audience? Yes, we've achieved our goals. There is a number of items. So first of all, yes, we've achieved our goals because we were targeting the target audience, the exactly one that we needed. And it was like, let's put it like this, we knew that there will be different discussions of this campaign. It was clear from the very beginning, but our main goal as a military, and in this case we are not an agency which works with commercial contractors. It's our recruiting. That's our biggest task. We're not supposed to be cool. We're not supposed to be beautiful in someone else's eyes. We just have to do our job in a way that it produces the highest level of efficiency. So all of those dialogues, they were in favor of the campaign. They benefited the campaign. And so far, I'm not seeing any huge problem in it. We were inviting Washington Post during the development of the campaign as a Western editorial, quite a progressive one. They were attending all the process of shooting and making the campaign. They were comparing it with the USA World War II recruiting campaigns, and they gave no negative responses about it. And on top of that, the young guys, when they have this romantic relationship on a distance, we have to see it in complex. You know, the tanks driving in the middle of the fields, and with the viburnum bush standing in the middle. You know, that can be an intense campaign, but it can pass unnoticed. Well, let me add a little bit. I didn't understand any sexism claims from the very beginning, because in such context, women bearing children will be considered sexism. I mean, it was a campaign about love, and that even during the war, the people deserve to love each other, even the military, even in the middle of the combat. This is what the campaign was about. But again, as I've mentioned before, our numbers are only growing. We cannot say that it's only due to the campaign or other components, but we only have positive dynamics in terms of recruiting. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions on the floor? If so, please raise your hands. Please, Mr. Lorenzo. Just a second. Just a second. We need translation.
So, please.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Lorenzo Cremonesi. I'm a reporter for Corriere della Sera, which is a major Italian daily newspaper. I have three questions. One, by the way, we have been just recently to visit your recruitment officer in Odessa, and we spoke with some, just by chance, some of your soldiers. So they already told us a lot of things. On the base of what you say and what they say, I asked this question. One, I know maybe it's a classified data, but can you give us an idea? Can you tell us in the last 3 months, how many men, how many soldiers, men and women, were you able to recruit effectively? I understood before there was a number 500. I don't know if it was a final number. It was for January, it was for February, for December. If you can give us an idea. Secondly, we know that for the last at least 1 year, if not more, the big problem of Ukraine army is not only ammunition, gun, but is also desertion and what you call the SZC, the people who don't come back to the unit. They don't desert, but in any case somehow desert. So you mentioned that also your colleague in Odessa told us that you have a plan, you have a program to go back to these people to try to convince them to go back. Can you be in detail? Because it's a major problem for Ukraine. And thirdly, I understood that one of the good ways that you have to convince people to stay and to come is the salary. Different data tell us that the average salary in the unit at the moment is 3,000 euro a month for soldier. Does it make sense? Can you be more detailed? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Firstly, I want to say that for the last 3 months, we have recruited more than 1,500 people. So it's more than 500 plus for 1 month. Secondly, about the SZC, people who left the brigades and who want to join the other brigade. We should understand that there are a lot of reasons why they are doing this, because the most common reason is that they have no knowledge, and it's not the problem of the brigades, it's the problem of teaching centers that are not given to enough knowledge to people who want to fight, but when they're coming to knowledge centers, when they should have the basic knowledge about fighting, about principles of war, they can't understand nothing. I am not speaking about all of these centers, but it's a big problem, because when we are speaking about our success, we want to make this success much more bigger, and we are teaching a lot of brigades, we are teaching a lot of people. When we began the counter-assault in 2023, a lot of people from a lot of brigades called us and asked us to teach them how to make the assault actions. But I don't want to criticize anyone, because nobody except us and except of some groups of people didn't understand that this war will be, because, you know, Russia is very interesting country. People can live in Russia in shit without canalization, but they spent a lot of money to intelligence and to propaganda. So that's why a lot of the intelligence was included in Ukrainian government, in Ukrainian armed forces during our history of existence. And not only to our, because a lot of foreign countries, United States, Italy, you know, a lot of European countries today should understand that Russians are also spending a lot of money to make some influence to your governments. It's their common characteristic during of all their history. So that's why we have this problem, but we are giving people who want to return to army second chance. And you know, now they are fighting in 3rd Assault Brigade, and they are fighting very well because they can see that we are building another army, different army, not Soviet army, with another principles, with a good level of knowledge, with excellent level of medicine, because we have the lowest level of loss in armed forces of Ukraine. That's because we have the highest level of medicine in armed forces in Ukraine, because medicine is on the 2nd place in our brigade. So I think that everybody should use our knowledge, use our experience, and it will be really great. And when I'm speaking about how not to lose this war, and a lot of people are asking me how not to lose this war, I'd like to answer: we can win this war, because we have the very big history of success, because the ratio level of losses in our direction is 1 to 18. 1 our soldier to 18 enemy soldiers. So that's why I think we can win. And about the salary, it's a very interesting question, because I think that if we are speaking about the price of Ukrainian soldier, I think that Ukrainian soldier has no price, because our lives and lives of Ukrainians are I think it's only bad people can name the prices of human lives. But when we're speaking about salary, all the salary will be not enough to pay the soldier. But we are fighting not for the salary. We are fighting for our independence. We are fighting for our possibility to live without Russians, without destroyed towns, destroyed cities, without perverts who are killing Ukrainian women and Ukrainian children.
Дякую. Чи є
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, because okay, so 500 in the last period makes sense every month. If you compare with 1 year ago, what was the rate?
Twice lower.
So it was about 200.
I think
100
250, 300.
1 year ago,
Yes.
a month.
Yes.
Thank you.
Дякую. Чи є ще запитання?
Well, thank you. Do we have any more questions on the floor? There was a question back there. Good afternoon, Igor Bondarenko, 1+1. Can you please tell us whether one can join a brigade under the contract 1824 that was recently announced by the Cabinet of Ministers? And how do you treat this idea to be able to make 1 million within 1 year? Well, it's a great idea. However, currently, no. There are no such contract with the 3rd Assault Brigade that allow you to make 1 million. I honestly hope that it's a mistake that will be solved shortly, that should be rectified shortly. Well, first of all, it's a test story, but we need the specific number of people. We need the real figures and the results of the program operation. We need time. The program was just only recently launched and is being discussed as like something done, but it's only been launched. That's the first thing. And secondly, that after people see how difficult, how complicated the war is, I think the biggest motives, not for everybody, but when it comes to the combat units, the main motive is to preserve life and health, or to have most chances to preserve them. And it brings us back to the words of the friend Sleep, because money is wonderful, but life and health is the main thing, because when you see that there is trust in the commanders, the way they command the operations, if I join, back in my day, for me, it's more important than the money. And if you ask whether it will influence our recruiting, yeah, it definitely will, but not in a critical way. Thank you. Do we have any more questions on the floor? If not, then one more question from me. I apologize. We're talking probably too much about the numbers. We're talking about 500 recruits per month, even more. Well, but is it enough? How many people does the brigade needs to cover all of their demands? Well, it's never enough. There may be some impression that we have more than 500 losses per month, but it's not so. I can say that the level of our sanitary losses is the lowest. What is the sanitary loss? Is when a warrior is injured in the battlefield and died as a result not of a deadly wound, but as a result of a failure to be provided medical aid to be delivered to the stabilization point. And basically the correlation of our losses with the enemy, I've named it. Well, it varies month to month from 1 to 12 to 1 to 18, depending on the month. I'm talking about the last month of the war. However, we're growing. We're the biggest brigade in the armed forces. Yeah, I think that number-wise we're the biggest. But still, it's never gonna be enough. We're setting the task, we're setting a goal for us, not only to fulfill our combat tasks, but to protect the Ukrainian land and to liberate the Ukrainian land. And yes, we definitely need people to make it happen. Well, as our commander Andriy Beletsky was saying, we have quite a big area of responsibility for a brigade, and in order to give the warriors what they need, like rotations, like to make sure like that people don't sit around. Like just an example, how does it correlate? If an infantryman is sitting in a position for a long time, they get tired, they lose their attention, they lose their training, well, attention in general, and the chance of them becoming 300 or 200 is increasingly grown because the enemy is inoffensive in our area of responsibility, and it's important to make sure our warriors can take rest in our area of responsibility that is really big for a brigade. So we need regular rotations, and in order to be able to make regular rotations, we need more infantrymen. So we have to comply with our internal standards when it comes to the number of people. Well, it doesn't correlate with the losses, but it correlates with other two things. First of all, is the development of the unit. Our UAV component, as it was mentioned, is growing intensely. Our organization chart has grown, and in order to comply with this component with good rotations, that's another thing that is implemented on our end, is when for one infantryman we need 5-6 logistical positions that service this position in a proper way. So they're well clad, well armed, they have good supplies, they have regular meals. Like, if we compare it with American armed forces, when they have 10 logistical positions per one infantryman, so we're moving that way. Thank you very much. Let me remind our spectators that we were discussing the military recruiting and the way the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade attracts new recruits. And at 1400, we will discuss the situation with influenza and acute respiratory virus infections in Ukraine. Thank you. Stay tuned.